I have to warn you before you click away. I work in the largest hospital in my city, where patients come from hundreds of miles to trust the doctors, the machines, the nurses. But what no one tells them, and what we're not supposed to tell, is that this hospital is not empty. Not at night. Something lingers here. Something that watches. Something that shouldn't exist. If you've ever felt eyes on you when no one is there, or heard whispers in an empty room, or felt a cold presence brushing past you in the dark, then you'll understand. Because I've lived it. I've seen it. And I can't unsee it. It started months ago with room 14, a 4-bed post-surgical unit. One patient told me she could hear 3 other people whispering softly around her bed. I pulled back the curtains. The beds were empty, no visitors, no staff, nothing. Just her, trembling, clutching the sheets. Weeks later, another patient in the same room described the exact same experience. 3 unseen figures, whispering. Her voice shook, describing every detail the same way. I smiled and reassured her she was imagining things. But deep down, I felt that same familiar chill crawling up my spine. That room, it wasn't just a room. Something had taken root there. Something human and yet not human. Hospitals are meant to heal. Yet some rooms hold onto fragments of the past, shadows of those who linger, waiting, watching, unseen. Some nurses refuse to sleep in the storage room on night shifts. They claim they've had nightmares, waking to the sensation of someone standing over them. I didn't believe it. One night, curiosity drove me there. I lay down, hoping for a short nap. The room felt smaller, heavier. Shadows pressed closer. Then it started, eyes on me. A dark shape hovered above my chest, moving closer, vanishing, then reappearing. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My heart hammered. Time stretched endlessly. When I finally forced myself awake, drenched in sweat, I knew I'd never go near that storage room again. The most terrifying incident happened in the staff break room. One nurse was asleep on the small couch when a bright light woke her. She thought someone had entered. Then she saw her. A woman stood on the other side of the glass door, staring straight ahead. Her hair was old-fashioned, curly, like it belonged to a nurse from decades ago. She wore blue pinstripe scrubs and a nurse's cap. She didn't move, didn't blink. She just watched. Another nurse walked in. "What's going on?" "Ghosts," I said. The sleeping nurse tried to cover herself with a pillow, but it didn't work. Hours later, the light remained. The doors were locked. Nobody had entered. The ghost nurse had appeared, watched, and vanished as if she could pass through walls. I didn't believe in ghosts. Logic said they didn't exist. Yet my heart raced as I walked down the hallway toward her. She moved down the side corridor, disappearing before I could reach the end. She couldn't move that fast, unless she wasn't entirely of this world. I checked room 9, the only other possibility. All patients were awake, though it was 3 a.m. Some said they felt someone lying next to them. Some reported seeing a nurse in retro scrubs. I told them it was nothing. But inside, I knew better. I haven't seen her since that night, but I can't shake the memory. Every time I drive home, sleepily, I see her curly gray hair and the hollow stare that freezes you in place. It keeps me awake. Better than any coffee. Patients continue to report figures in room 14, shadows moving across empty beds, whispering voices that vanish when you turn to look. We never tell them the truth. Sometimes ignorance protects them, but for those of us who work here, we live with it. The fear, the unexplainable, the things that shouldn't exist. The smell of antiseptic mixes with something else at night. A metallic tang, almost like blood, or maybe the fear itself. The hum of fluorescent lights seems to warp. Floors creak when no one is walking. Shadows twist just at the edge of vision. I feel eyes where none should be. Sometimes a whisper brushes my ear, too soft to catch words, but unmistakably there. I've walked alone down the longest corridor, heart hammering, only to see a figure vanish at the end. A nurse from decades past? A fragment of someone who died and didn't leave? The uncertainty gnaws at me, and I know it will haunt anyone who stays too long at night. Tonight, I'm heading in for another night shift. The hospital hums differently when the lights go dim. Air feels heavier, corridors darker, and in the silence, I hear footsteps where there should be none. I take a deep breath, clench my fists, and walk through the doors. I know what could be waiting in the shadows. I know she might be watching. Because in this hospital, the dead don't always leave. And sometimes, they make sure you never forget. If you ever find yourself alone in a hospital at night and you feel someone's eyes on you, don't turn around. Don't open your eyes. And for heaven's sake, don't walk down empty hallways after dark. Because she's there. She remembers. And she waits. I never considered myself religious. Ghosts, spirits, stuff like that. I didn't believe in any of it. But one night, in the basement of the hospital where I work, I experienced something I cannot explain. Something that made my heart pound so hard, I thought it might burst. And if you've ever been in a hospital after hours, when the corridors are empty and the hum of machines is the only sound, you'll understand why I still can't forget it. It was 3 a.m. The PICU on the 3rd floor was locked down for the night. No visitors, no staff wandering the halls except those on duty. The basement storage area was crammed with equipment, gurneys stacked like towers, carts in every corner. It should have been ordinary. It should have been quiet. But it wasn't. I was down there grabbing a new gurney. Ours had been destroyed by a violent patient earlier that night, leaving us scrambling. The basement smelled faintly of disinfectant mixed with the metallic tang of old machinery. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and twist along the walls. Every footstep echoed in the vast room, amplifying the silence. I moved carefully between the towers of equipment, scanning the corners. The place should have been empty. But there's a certain feeling you get when something is off. A presence, a subtle tension that makes your skin crawl. I brushed it off. I had work to do. Then I felt it. A tug on my shirt. Light at first, almost like it got caught on a piece of metal. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Maybe it was nothing. But then it happened again. This time, there was a voice. Clear. Crystal clear. I'm lost. Every hair on my body stood on end. My blood ran cold. The words echoed in the room, but it wasn't an echo. It came from a direction I couldn't place. I couldn't see anyone. The basement was still packed with shadows, carts and gurneys. But there was no one there. I called down to my partner, forcing my voice to stay calm. Hey, can you help me with the gurney? I made it sound ordinary, casual, but my chest was tight, my hands shaking. I moved the gurney toward the open space, every sense alert. The room felt smaller, the shadows heavier. My imagination tried to rationalize it. Maybe a mouse, maybe event shifting. but the voice was unmistakable. A little girl saying, "I'm lost." I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting someone to step out from behind a stack of carts. Nothing. Silence. Just the hum of the lights, my own breathing of my heart. I took a slow step forward. Another tug. My stomach dropped. I felt as though eyes were on me, unseen but intense. The air had grown colder, the kind of chill that seems to seep into your bones. I had heard stories before. Nurses, CNAs, even physicians talking about strange things in the ICU or hospice units. But I had always been skeptical. Now, I wasn't. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't stress. It was real. Something, or someone, was in that basement with me. I called my partner again, voice barely above a whisper. "Seriously, can you come down?" The gurney squeaked loudly as I moved it, almost mocking me. I kept my eyes scanning every corner. Every shadow felt like it could be watching, moving. I tried to reason with myself. Hospitals are full of stress, adrenaline, exhaustion. Maybe I was tired. Maybe it was the hum of the lights playing tricks. But the tug on my shirt and that voice, that wasn't imagination. Not for a second. The basement air was thick now, heavy, almost tangible. Every sound was amplified. The distant beeping of a machine above, a cart rolling in another room, my own heartbeat. My palms were sweating, yet goosebumps raced up my arms. I felt watched, stalked, like someone or something was following me silently. Then it moved. I couldn't see it, but I could feel the shift in energy. A presence brushing past me, light as a whisper, yet undeniable. I swallowed hard, trying not to scream. I remembered the stories from other staff. ICU nurses who woke in the middle of night shifts, feeling cold hands on their shoulders. Hospice aides who heard children laughing in empty rooms. Physicians who reported seeing figures in the hallways that disappeared before they could reach them. And now, I understood. I finally maneuvered the gurney toward the door, my back rigid, every nerve on fire. The air around me felt alive. Then, just as I reached the exit, I heard it again. Soft, almost pleading, "I'm lost." My blood ran cold. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My partner arrived seconds later, breaking the spell, and I clumsily explained about the gurney. I didn't tell them what I had really felt. They would have laughed, or worse, thought I was losing it. But I knew what I experienced was real. I've been back to that basement hundreds of times since. And sometimes, when the lights flicker or the air grows cold, I swear I feel it again. A tug on my shirt, a whisper, a little girl, still lost. And I think about the nurses, CNAs, and doctors who've shared similar experiences. This hospital holds more than just patients and staff. It holds fragments of something else. Something that lingers in the shadows, watching, waiting. If you ever find yourself alone in a hospital at night and you feel a tug, hear a whisper, or sense someone following you, don't turn around, don't call out, and whatever you do, don't ignore it. Because she's there, and she's still lost. I've worked night shifts at this hospital for 5 years, and I've seen things that made my blood run cold. Machines beeping, patients in pain, hallways stretching endlessly in the dim light. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened one winter night at 3 a.m. It started with a scream, a voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of fluorescent lights. A patient, fully alert, with no cognitive issues, screamed about a man with a bag over his head, standing at the foot of her bed. I rushed toward her room with another nurse, shoes squeaking against the cold, old linoleum. But the scream wasn't the worst part. It was what I saw after I turned to leave. This hospital isn't like most. Built during World War II as a temporary facility, it was never supposed to last this long. Over the decades, it's been expanded, slightly modernized, but its age still clings to every corner. The walls are thick and cold, floors creak under the weight of your steps, and the fluorescent lights flicker, casting shadows that stretch unnaturally along the hallways. At night, the winter chill creeps in through cracks in the windows and under doors. It wraps around you like a cold hand, crawling up your spine. The faint smell of antiseptic mixes with something older, something faintly metallic, like the memory of decades of blood, tears, and whispered secrets. The corridors twist and turn, some hallways longer than they should be, corners that seem to bend slightly in the dark. It's easy to feel that you're not alone, even when no one else is there. It was around 2:30 or 3 a.m. when the scream tore through the stillness. "There's a man at the end of my bed," the patient cried. "He has a bag over his head. He's watching me." My partner and I rushed into the room, hearts pounding. The patient was trembling violently, eyes wide and fixed on the far end of the bed. Her hands shook as she pointed. I tried to calm her, speaking softly, assuring her there was nothing there. But as I did, I felt it. The hair on my arm standing on end, my stomach tightening. Something was off. My instinct screamed that there was more to this than a frightened imagination. The patient's fear was tangible, infectious. Every time she took a breath, it felt like the room tightened around us. Shadows danced across the walls in ways that didn't match the lights. For a moment, I hesitated at the doorway, feeling a pull I couldn't explain, a cold pressure pressing on my chest. Finally, she began to calm. Her breathing slowed, tears streaked down her face, and she whispered her apologies, embarrassed. I glanced around the room, checking every corner. Nothing. Quiet. Empty. And yet, my gut told me we hadn't seen the full story. As we turned to leave, I froze. Through the double doors outside her room, doors tucked into a small alcove, we saw it. A shadowy figure glided across the doorway, too smooth, too quick to be human. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a reflection, maybe a staff member moving in the dark. But then my partner whispered, "Those doors are always locked. You need keys to open and relock them. For someone to appear on the other side, moving that fast, it would have been impossible." The shadow passed, elongated and dark, yet solid enough to feel his presence. We stared at each other, unable to speak, hearts hammering. The impossible had just happened in front of our eyes. Slowly, we returned to the desk, unnerved, exchanging glances heavy with fear and disbelief. Hospitals are strange at night. Machines beep incessantly, the antiseptic smells strong, and the hallways are silent except for your own footsteps. But this felt alive. The air seemed to hum with a presence we could not see. The patient's words and the figure we witnessed didn't match anything we could explain rationally. I replayed the scene over and over. Shadows that shouldn't move, doors that shouldn't be crossed, a presence that shouldn't exist. My training as a nurse teaches calm, observation, and rationality. But my body reacted instinctively. Goosebumps, cold sweat, rapid heartbeat. Something in this hospital wasn't just old. It was watching, waiting. Over 5 years, I've had 3 personal experiences here that made me question reality. Each began subtly, A creak, a flicker, a whisper, but escalated into something undeniable. That night, the patient's terror, the shadow passing through locked doors, it all fit together. The hospital itself seemed alive. I could almost hear it breathe in the corridors, almost feel it leaning over my shoulder. Walls that had seen decades of lives, laughter, and death now whispered their secrets to those who dared to listen. Even now, walking those corridors alone, the memory creeps back. Shadows flicker at the edge of my vision. Doors that should be locked seem ajar. And sometimes, a whisper that isn't there. A presence that isn't mine. We never reported the incident. Not because we feared ridicule, but because some things aren't meant to be explained. Some truths are meant to linger in the shadows, just out of reach. The patient eventually recovered and left, but her words echo in my mind. The man with a bag over his head, the shadow we saw. Impossible, yet undeniable. I often wonder, is it tied to the hospital's history? The lives lost here, the decades of whispered stories, the endless winter nights? Or is it something else entirely? Something that chooses who sees it and when. And I know, without a doubt, that night wasn't the last time I'd encounter something I couldn't explain. Something that doesn't belong in our world, but refuses to stay hidden. Have you ever felt someone watching you when you were alone at night? Share your story in the comments. I read everyone, and some might inspire my next video. If you love these chilling, real-life horror stories that make your skin crawl, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you dare, watch the next video, because the next story is darker than you can imagine.